Hello and welcome to the Brothers Get In podcast, the show that explores how to create more prepared, more resilient, more responsible, more apocalypse-ready human beings. I'm Stuart.
And I'm Anthony.
AKA Gads the Younger and Gads the Older. Elder. That sounds better, doesn't it?
Much better, yeah.
Right. And we're going to take you through today's episode. So, today's episode
is one I think is very dear and close to our hearts. Something that we talk about often, with much passion sometimes, is about how to get into the Special Forces.
So, for those who've never listened to the podcast before, we're two brothers who both served in the Australian Special Forces community. Anthony over west in SAS, myself over east in the Commandos. So, you know, you might say tier 1, tier 2.
Definitely would say tier 1.
Depending on who you're asking. So, you know, we've got a bit of a background in this sort of stuff. We obviously use this sort of information, our experiences, what we've done throughout our lives, to now help teach other people to best be prepared for emergency situations, to best be prepared for disaster situations, but also to employ those skills in these areas. And specifically, you know, we work with charitable organisations like XMed and go overseas, do this sort of stuff when disasters happen, and try and, as I like to always say, be an asset and not a liability.
Absolutely. And which is probably one of the keys. Like, we're going to talk today a little bit about our background in the Special Forces and what kind of person gets into these sort of things. Because granted, each of them have a selection process, which is quite rigorous, and it's relatively only a few people that get in, only a few per year, or lower percentage that get in each year. And people always ask, what does it take to get in? We're going to discuss that a little bit today.
Cool. So, without any further ado, I guess let's jump into it. First off, what kind of person, I guess, is going to do this?
Yeah.
What kind of person wants to actually go and sign up for Special Forces?
Because if you think about it in this one way, you're going to work harder, you're going to be more uncomfortable, and there's the greater risk of injury than any other job that you could think of within the Defence Force. The kind of person that looks for it, I think there's two distinct kinds of people. One is looking for glory, and the other is looking for a purpose.
So I guess this sort of begs the question to start off with, what is Special Forces? Because there's a lot of stuff around this. You know, you say the word, people conjure up Arnold Schwarzenegger, especially like the movie Commando. I think that was 1984. Maybe 1986 or something.
86, yeah.
86. Commando. And that's a pretty spot-on depiction of what commandos are. Yeah. We're all massive. We're all
big, bulky, and really stupid.
and kill a lot of things. So what is Special Forces? How would you describe it? And then I suppose we'll delve into what the difference between the Australian Special Forces community is.
Yeah. So Special Forces, I mean, as we alluded to, they're the elite sort of part of the Defence Force. They go out in particular situations that can't be dealt with by regular forces, often in small groups, and put into quite hazardous situations that require specialist training. To get to that thing requires a mindset and a physical and mental adaptability to be able to get through the training and then carry out these kind of missions. Now, we've all seen, you know, we've got a bit of an idea. There's a lot of things out there on the TV and movies and things like that might give you some idea what's out there, although it's highly glamorised. But it is a particular niche, I suppose, capability within the Defence Force.
Yeah. The idea that like whenever I say special forces, it's usually followed up by a lot of people going, "Oh, well, you must have been very fit." And like, I don't think that's necessarily true, depending on what your definition of fitness is. Like, certainly suit to task type fitness, but there was this idea that everyone is 6 foot plus tall, is quite muscular, huge barrel chested individuals that can pull people's arms off out of their sockets. In my experience, at least, that's certainly wasn't true. There were people like that I worked with. I would not put myself in that category. And there were people who were 40 years old, beanstalks, skinny little guys who were punching a pack of darts a day, like smoking like a chimney and chugging coffee like it was going out of fashion, and still doing the job.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The range and different body types of people. Yeah, there's no one specific body type that gets into special forces. It probably fits that you need a different range of type of people to fit different scenarios. As in, when you think about the makeup of a team or a section or a platoon, you need people with all different types of specialised training. But yeah, you're right. I don't think the big, bulky, like Arnold Schwarzenegger type body type is actually predominant at all. Now, I caveat that with there's people that I knew within Special Forces which I would call genetic freaks. They could lift, they could run endlessly, regardless of what they did, whether they were smoking, drinking, anything else in between, without much training, and they would do phenomenally well. I remember, for example, when we were part of the counter-terrorism team for the Sydney Olympics, as part of it, would go down and have a look at the venues, and a couple of guys that were good at running decided to test themselves around the track to see, as a time trial, what times they would get. Now, these guys don't specifically train for running. They've got all sorts of training. They've got the normal workload of us running around body armour and shooting and recons and all the rest of it. Yet they were getting times which we compared to people in the Olympics would have got them about 4th place. And this without training. So the rest of us just have to keep up with these kind of people. Yeah. We work hard. And there's a lot of average people in the Special Force, what I call average, like us, that just work our guts out to keep up with these kind of freaks of nature.
Yeah, my experience of when it came to the fitness side or the physical side of getting in and staying in, because you have to regularly test this sort of stuff. You can't just do it once and then, ticked in the box. For me, it was a constant process of the hardest workout or physical test that I'd ever done. It didn't matter what level I was at. Right from joining the army, that was the hardest test I'd ever done. Then in basic training, that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Then infantry training, that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Special Forces entry test, hardest thing I'd ever done. The commando testing, hardest thing I've ever done, and so on and so forth. So it was always the hardest thing I'd ever done. And for me, I was never really first in anything. I was all right at pack marching, very, very bad at running.
Don't have to be first, just don't be last.
Yeah, yep. And that was the thing. It was just like, well, just keep going, just keep pushing. There was a certain maybe stubbornness, mental robustness, some might call it.
I'd like to call it almost ignorance. Ignorance of that I can't do this. I just will do this.
Yeah, I don't know that I can't do this.
So I'll just get up and keep going. And look, that kind of, almost that mindset, I think, is one of the underlying keys, is just getting up and going again. In Special Forces, even in missions and in training, failure is endemic. It happens a lot. It's part and parcel of it. It's an expected thing. You do everything you can to elude it or prepare from it, but you prepare for failure on everything. I noticed quickly in Special Forces that you carry a lot of extra shit with you that you don't normally carry in the regular force. And the reason that is because you expect for things to go wrong. So you try and prepare as much as you can.
Yep. The other side of this is something that I observed a number of times, not always, but a number of times. What would happen is you'd get really fit people come in and try out or even get through, but eventually break down. And what I concluded from that was that these are people who have been good at things their entire life. They're the kid that got the MVP on the sporting team, who won the blue first ribbon in their local school comp, that, has always dominated, has always, has done triathlons, has done all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden they're hitting that adversity. And they hadn't really failed before. They don't know how to deal with failure, how to work through that, and how to get back up and continue on.
True. And I agree with this, that underlying any physical attributes, it is a mental mindset game. It's a mental game. At the end of the day, when these selection courses are run, they will push you to your physical limits and far beyond. But that's not what they're there to do. They're not there testing you physically at all. They're there to see what's lying underneath and what is in your mind. How does that operate? How does that work when things go wrong?
Yeah. So mental toughness, the ability to find comfort in being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Adaptability. And I'd throw in a last one here, the ability to work well autonomously and or in small groups of human beings.
Yeah. So that working autonomously or with small groups, which leads directly, we'll start to talk a little bit now what the selection is. And if we break it down in probably to about 3 different phases. Most of the time the selections run for about 21 days. And in the first phase, you get all your physical testing. There's a lot of you're in camp, you get up early, you do session after session of training, plus, your pack march test, your running test, your push-up test, your chin pull-up test, all those sorts of things. It's physically demanding, but you're getting fed, you're getting a reasonable amount of sleep, and you're in the group at this stage. Most people start off okay with this. Some people won't make past the test and off they'll go home. Some people just decide for whatever reason this isn't for them at this stage and go home. And that's where you start to lose a lot of people. The next stage is out on your own with a pack marching for days on end, by day and by night, trying to reach a certain amount of markers. This is where, if you like pack marching, walk around the bush, it's no problem. And as long as you can plan it out, you can do well. What we found is that in the selection process, this is actually the phase where you lose the most people. I found when I did mine, when I came back from that, at least half to 3/4 of the original group had disappeared. Now keep in mind, there might be a few from injury. At this stage, no one's getting pulled off. Everyone is pulling themselves out of the competition and going home, because being out there alone by yourself in the wilderness is tough. You've got time to think while you're walking around, time to second guess yourself, how you're going. You don't have that immediate feedback of the person next to you doing push-ups and say, am I comparable? And this does a lot of people heads in at this stage.
That phase there, I remember that, the navigation phase. So you're navigating, you're trying to hit these, markers. You're having to do it. No one's checking your nav. No one's telling you you're right or wrong until you get to the point that you're supposed to get to, or that you think you're supposed to get to. And then, you head off to the next one. You can go as fast and as hard as you want. There's X amount that you have to get done. Off memory, I don't think they actually told us what the pass mark was. So
No.
Yeah. So you could think you're killing it, but really, you're falling behind. So I think that was a huge part of it, is that you don't know what the pass mark is. And so if you're doing good or not, you just have to keep going. It really spun me out, though, that when I got back, there was, that this is classically the phase where most people withdraw from the actual testing, because I had a ball out there.
Yeah.
I had fun.
Some people don't have so much fun.
There's definitely scary parts of it. The part being I don't know how I'm doing, but I'm okay at navigating, and I like navigating. And pack marching is something that I enjoy. And not being too like overly exposed in a competitive sense in front of people is also something like I just like working on my own work, being a little bit of an introvert. So it was right up my alley. But yeah, it's quite tough. And I watch shows like Alone, especially, where if you've ever watched that show, you know, somebody's out in the wilderness, they're by themselves, they have to survive out there for as long as possible, and there's 10 contestants doing their own thing, not seeing anyone, and then they've got a sat phone. And at some point they go, right, I've had enough and I'm tapping out. Some people hurt themselves, some people lose some equipment, some people struggle, but a lot of people I just see sitting there and going like, yep, everything's going great, everything's perfect. And I'm watching them and I'm going, this person's like killing it here. And then they just pick up that phone, they go, I miss my family, I'm struggling, I'm calling in, that's it, I'm done. And they're over. And like, I totally understand that, because it's the exact same sort of mentality where you're out doing this stuff and you're like, I don't know, I don't have the construct, the confines, the left and right of arc that I usually have. I don't have someone looking over my shoulder. I don't have someone, you know, tapping me, making sure I'm going the right way. And that's terrifying for people.
And you think about in life in general, most of us aren't alone for any great periods of time. And one of the things through these selection courses is there's a policy of zero feedback. You don't get yelled at, but you don't get congratulated. So you don't know really. A lot of people thrive on either one of those. But to have zero feedback and just do the task. Some people find this very daunting indeed. Another thing noticed during that sort of pack marching phase is this probably where some of the bigger body types, the more bulky ones, they require a lot of food to sustain themselves and a lot of water and a lot of energy. This is where they found it probably harder. This, I think, for these bigger body types, the big Arnie Schwarzenegger types, found it very difficult. And from my memory, there weren't very many, if any of them, left after this stage.
Yeah. Next phase,
the final phase, is really just a test of endurance. So this is where you get no sleep, no food, and you just got to keep moving task after task. How you keep your mindset from wandering, how to get through that hunger. The hunger comes, the tiredness comes, it's guaranteed, and it hits everyone. Some people hit their wall and have emotional outbursts or just feel that they cannot go anymore. But you've got to learn to ride through those waves and get through to the next one, because they ebb and flow.
The aptly named demarcation, where it's a line in the sand really, where you've got those who can and those who cannot. Like it makes such a definite push towards the people who are something else outside of the norm, I think.
Absolutely. And look, there is a physiological side to this. Your body doesn't want you to run too close to empty. It doesn't want you to fall and falter. So it will send signals, which will send to your mind, which will start the thought process going is like, I can't go any further. And it'll try and stop you, try and convince you that you can't go any further so you can pull out or get a feed or do something else other than just walking through to oblivion. This usually happens for most people at about 1/3 of their capability. Most people get to the point where I cannot go any further, and they're about a third of the long way. They've still got a long way to go. Once you break through that barrier, it's almost like getting a second wind for those of you that are runners or do endurance type activities. When you get your second wind, and now you can keep going. You get through that first barrier and you can continue to push your body. It will, by that stage though, have probably another third before any sort of real damage will happen. Then you push into that third of your sort of total endurance, where there will be some breakdown and damage. Unfortunately, there's probably not at this stage any sort of markers in your mind because you've already broken that barrier. And in that last third is where you might get some injury that is recoverable, but all the way up to getting permanent injury and exhaustion and death. But this is the way that human physiology works. It wants to stop you really, really early. It's a relative scale. So I say a third is about the average. Some people have it that point of like, I cannot go any further, a lot closer in. And some people have that stopping point, might be up to half of their capability before that starts, their body and their mind starts screaming at them. So the people that get past this are the people that we really need or we want within the Special Forces community. And this is what we're partially what we're selecting for.
So what was it 3 or 4 days, no food, no sleep, and just unrelenting, punishing physical activity of different sorts all the time. And tasks like, not just like, oh, do push-ups and do squats. It's like your team has to pick up all this equipment here. And once you've picked it up, it cannot touch the ground. And you have to then navigate through the night to this other point here. So there's tasks you have to complete. There's things you have to do, which are nigh on impossible. They're like truck tires and trunks filled with weights and stuff like this, and mortar tubes and
trailers with only one wheel.
Right.
And away you'll go. And you'll be asked to get these equipment to a certain point in time. And I can guarantee you won't get there in that certain point in time. And if you can't accept or understand that that's part of the program, and some people don't and lose it at that stage, it's quite amazing to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Some strange things happen, or some strange things happen to me on my demarcation. And it really reinforced to me that I can live for, 3 or 4 days under almost any circumstances. But one of the key things is, if I'm not eating, I should probably sleep a lot more. If I'm not sleeping, I will eat a lot more. Those two things I really found go hand in hand. And I've actually practiced that throughout the years afterwards, that, okay, whatever's happened and I haven't had the ability to sleep, my caloric intake increases.
Absolutely. I use that exact formula for doing night shifts, where you've just got to stay up all night in the hospital, go. And I know that, look, what I'm going to do is compensate my lack of sleep through that time by eating more. Every time I feel a bit tired, I just eat a bit more.
Yep.
Luckily, I'm in that circumstance where you can, but yeah, to stay alert, to stay functional, it is a balance between those.
Yeah. So when you're robbed of both those options, things start getting weird. I was hallucinating towards the end. I remember they stopped, it was actually towards the end, and they made us do a ambush at night under NVG, and I was sitting there trying to stay awake, I was out of body, had no idea what was going on, and I'm looking through this NVG tube, and I swear I could see little blue Disney birds flying around, landing on trees around me.
I can see why it's almost a semi-spiritual experience to get to that state.
Definitely.
So we talked a bit about the selection course, which is actually the first part of it, and some of the attributes it needs to get through that. But that's not the totality of getting into Special Forces. That's actually just the beginning. Well, it's the beginning of the beginning, really. Because after that, you will get either selected or not. Very few people that make it to the end don't get selected, but a few don't.
Yeah, so, there was this idea, okay, you just make it through this course, and then I'm on Easy Street. I'm in. I'm done. But no, then you've got the reinforcement cycle. So then you've got a whole heap of courses that you have to do after that, which include like parachuting and amphibious operations and, close quarter combat, et cetera, et cetera. All these courses you have to do. And every single one of them you have to pass. And every single one of them is almost harder than the next. The previous.
Yeah, there's some of them, I'd say, almost akin to the selection course. Now, I'm talking about is the water ops course.
Yeah, amphib course for commandos. It was
absolutely horrendous. Here you are back to that state of working hard by day, by night, limited sleep, and go the whole time. It was horrendously hard. Now, I say that. When I did the water ops course, and then the air operators, they went off to Queensland and they did their jumps, and they'd jump out of the plane, and then they'd go home for dinner and beers, and they'd send us postcards and pictures of them getting dinner and beers while we're just sitting there in the cold and the wet and shaking because they're just like can't get any relief.
I remember it being so bad. So what they used to do, like you'd have your cams on or your clothing on, saturated, totally wet. And at the end of the night, you'd get back in at 10, 11, midnight, whatever time, 1 in the morning. You'd deservice all the boats, wash everything down, pack everything up, take off your cams, hang them up outside, and then go and try and get some sleep. So you'd hit a little bunk bed, go to sleep, and then they'd wake you up pre-dawn, and you'd have to go outside, put on your wet and cold cams, and the first thing you do is go out into the water till you can't stand, and just sit there and scull in the water, like stay afloat in the water for like 10, 15 minutes. That was, and welcome to the day. Now we're going to start working. And I remember maybe about a week into it, I'd wake up and just start convulsively shivering. Like my body would just go, oh, I know what's about to happen. And I'd just start shaking like,
It's just getting ready, getting warm. Now, I just want to pause here and ask, how many of you masochists out there think that sounds like fun, sounds like a good idea? Because if you do, then yes, you probably should apply for Special Forces. And you've got to be able to either switch that stuff off or actually enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that comes to one of the key points is one of the things I started to really learn, especially with things like pack marching is a great example of this. I never felt like I got better really at pack marching. It hurt the first time I did it, and it hurt the last time I did it. It was just, I got used to that pain, and I knew how to deal with the pain and the uncomfortableness. So anything you're doing, right, anytime you an exercise, a mission, whatever it was, guaranteed it'll be dark and cold and rainy, and you'll be hungry, and your feet will hurt, and you'll have blisters and rashes and all sorts of painful little annoying things going on. You just have to find a way to be comfortable with that. And sometimes that way of finding comfort for me was going, this is kind of cool. This is an experience that very, very few people on the face of the earth will ever get to experience.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly it. You've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's what that phrase means. And I think people underrate that. People that think, I want to do Special Forces, underrate that's got to be a happy place, pretty much. It's unusual to think about, but the kind of people that need to be, because you need to be consciously aware of what's going on around you, and you have to be happy to be in that place, because that way you will function a whole lot better. You will not be internalizing your pain and suffering, but you'll have focus outside of what your body is feeling, what your mind is saying, and be able to be a good operator.
Schadenfreude too, which is a German term for taking pleasure in other people's misfortune or pain. I think there's a caliber, there's a certain section of people, and I may fall into this kind of person who takes a bit of pleasure from watching other people hurting. So I wouldn't say I took pleasure, but I'm hurting, and then I'll look around and I see someone else hurting, and I go,
Yeah, I think that's shared suffering. That might be slightly different in taking pleasure in other people's pain. I think as long as you're sharing it and you got a common bond that someone's experiencing the same thing that you are. I think that's,
Well, there was definitely certain people that I definitely took pleasure in their pain.
True.
So, I mean, yeah, that's something too. I mean, it's a relative sort of thing, and understanding that I'm not the only one. This isn't just sucky for me. This is just sucky. Like, what's happening here isn't a personal affront just towards me. The person yelling at me isn't doing it, or maybe they are, but the mentality that I would have is they're not doing it just towards me. This is, the universe does not owe me anything. Nobody here in the military owes me anything. It's not personal. It just is.
That's it. And just the concept of dealing with it that way, and that's a good way to set up for mental resilience in general, is that understanding that some of these things just are. And I think that's some of the attributes, again, they're looking for that Special Forces soldiers, that you can accept that, not lose it emotionally, and continue on with your task.
I think that's why philosophies like Stoicism seem to be so popular within military communities, within special forces communities as well. But, there's a bit of a rise of it today. It's gained a bit of popularity in the last few years. And it's just that, like, that's what Stoicism is kind of getting at, is there is suffering. And, there you can go into it, you can sit there and whinge about it, but it's not going to help you at all. There is only one way out of it, and it's to try and control how you feel about the suffering. The suffering will not go away. The pain, the task, whatever it is, it's not going to go away. But you can either sit there and go, oh, this sucks, I'm going to hate this, oh, why me? Or you can just go, okay, I'm in pain. That is, but I don't have to hold on to that.
No, I think with that is you accept it, put it to the side, and focus on what you need to do next. This is a very important part of that.
So, all right. So I think we've painted the mental instability of special forces people enough. Starting to understand it. So, there is a physical element, but the physical element, for me at least, is just a mere manifestation of the mental resilience.
Yep.
That was more important. Adaptability. Things are going to change. Like you were saying, they're not testing you physically. They're not saying, right, you have to make this time. I mean, there are time marks you have to make or whatever, but that's not the point of it, because they will keep pushing you physically until you break. That's what they're looking for. So they're seeing how adaptable you are in a way. Can you change to changing circumstances?
Absolutely. There's that. And with some of those timed tests and things, that's really testing your preparation. You need to be prepared, and you need to be prepared to do that test at that time, sort of thing. So if you've got a combination of testing your physical ability to a point, but it's really testing preparation. Like I said, none of this is really a physical test per se. They're testing other attributes that you've got.
What else? There's my test there.
I think you're being summoned.
Yep. Child screaming in the background. It's an ongoing test. That's sleep deprivation right there.
That is sleep deprivation 101.
Yep.
Having a small child.
Yeah. So, I didn't prepare. I did. I prepared for Special Forces, but really Special Forces was just a preparation for me to go into fatherhood.
Child rearing.
Okay, so what else? What does it take?
What does it take? So you're saying being able to learn or being adaptable. So you're going to go through a number of courses on your reinforcement cycle, and you've got to pick up things quickly, pick up these learnings, pick up the key points of something that's put in front of you, and being able to carry out what you've been taught in a quick amount of time in a safe-ish manner.
Yep. This is actually one of those things that I think is, I still find a mystery. I still find a mystery how I do it and why. Just that, okay, you showed me something once, I will be able to emulate that and give you a good facsimile of that to probably 85, 90%. I won't get all the points. I won't get everything 100% spot on. Give it to me another time and I'll get pretty close to 100. But, and I thought that was a normal thing, being that I was mainly in that community when I was in the military, until I got out of the military and found out it's like, oh, wait, most people can't or won't do that. So,
I think, look, some of it is like a natural thing that comes out in people. Something of it is taught by the people that you're around. I have a theory that I'd love to test out one day, is that some people have greater access to their cerebellum and get things processed through their cerebellum as opposed to through their frontal cortex a lot quicker than others. That ability to imprint, turn it into a physical ability rather quickly, I believe would be igniting or lighting up your cerebellum a lot better than your cerebrum.
So cerebellum, just explaining that, what part of the brain is that?
It's almost, if you think about the brain and then the back part of the brain, there's almost this underlying little wrinkly bit that attaches close to your spinal cord. It's previously been thought that that operates a lot of your movements and your imprinted pattern memory functions. It's almost your second brain.
If you look at a photo of the brain, it looks like an add-on to me.
Yeah.
It looks like something they've just gone like, oh, actually, we forgot to do this. Let's just click that in there.
Click it on at the back, underneath everything. See how that goes.
Yeah. And so physical literacy, maybe, for us, we grew up doing martial arts and a whole heap of other things that boys do. Like we were rambunctious little lads back in the day.
Running, fighting, climbing, riding bikes.
Yep.
Getting in all sorts of trouble.
Jumping off roofs, swinging down creeks and all sorts of weird stuff. But I have found because of that, I think like I've noticed my ability to pick up physical skills is pretty high. So I can watch someone do something and give it a crack. Once I try it or get coached through it, then I'm usually quite good in a short period of time. So maybe that has something to do with it.
That's what I'd have a theory on that is. I mean, a lot of your mirror or your cells that you see, like what they say, monkey see, monkey do, be able to replicate that is held within your cerebellum as well.
Yeah.
So this is part and parcel of people that can pick up things rather quickly is something that definitely is a requirement of people wanting to do special forces.
Mirror neurons. Which are, for those who haven't heard of that sort of idea before, they're neurons or they're parts of your brain, which is exactly that monkey see, monkey do. So you look at something and that will go, right, this is how we do that in the brain. Essentially, it's seeing a representation of it or somebody do something and you then figuring out how you do that without actually having done it before.
For those of you that have small children, you'd understand that because you'd see that they watch you very carefully, and as soon as they watch you, they can do it without any instruction because they don't have the verbal language to do it. Other people, I recommend watching someone else's child with permission.
Yeah, don't go like looking at kids or something, like some weirdo.
And just see how quickly they pick up things almost intuitively.
Cool. All right. Let's have a quick chat then about maybe some of these lessons learned that we've got about how to get into special forces and how that might be applicable for people who didn't go into special forces, who didn't go into the military, just normal everyday folk, regardless of whether they want to or not. But how would you take some of this stuff and apply it, or how would you pass this on to people who aren't?
So I think start off with the preparation. So find out as much as you can about what the job would be in the special forces, what it looks like. Have a look at the people that have been in those positions, and get an idea or a feeling of what it's like to set up for them. Then you have to start to prepare yourself. And there's two things you have to prepare. You have to prepare yourself physically. So make sure that you can do some of these tasks that they ask. So understand and know what the running test requirements are, what the pack marching requirements are for these sorts of things. How many push-ups do you need to do in what time frame? What equipment do you need to carry, and start getting used to it. Especially for things like the pack march and that, make sure that you have equipment that you're going to be using on the test day. It's no use having the most Gucciest boots and best equipment that you need and not being able to use that. So getting to know your equipment, getting to know not just that it works, but where it hurts you, where it rubs on you, and how to fix those sort of rub points. Know when those uncomfortable points are and how to fix them. The next thing after that is knowing your skills so you can trust in yourself. So being able to navigate would be vitally important. Knowing some sort of military sort of skills would be important. And having confidence in being able to do those things. The final, I think it's good training with someone when you're preparing for these sorts of things. It's fun, but you need to be able to do a lot of your training by yourself. If you can't get used to being alone, being able to deal with your own like positive and negative feedback loops on your training, then you won't be able to do it on the day. And I wouldn't expect for you to be able to do it on the day. So you need to start rehearsing that of what it feels like to train and trust yourself. That would be some of my key points to take away. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, last question before we wrap it up. Of all the things that you've experienced, learnt, or things that we've talked about today on today's podcast, what is the one most important or one thing that you would like to get across to someone? So, random person on the street, or maybe it's someone that you know. You want to impart one piece of information, knowledge, inspiration, whatever it is, to them about what it takes to get into special forces, but something that they can actually just use in their life, in normal everyday life. So then they're not somebody who's going to go into the military.
Sure.
So I'll jump in first because
Yep.
I want to, just in case you steal mine, and this is the only one I can think of.
Okay.
Just to give you some thinking time too. Mine is the being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think, for me, this is a little bit of a superpower nowadays, and especially in our society. We're in Australia, we're in the Western world, the developed world, whatever you want to call it. We don't have to survive. There is nothing you have to do on a daily basis that is going to impact your survival. That we have systems really set up. Okay, so you never have to wake up really. Well, there's very few people who wake up in Australia and go, right, where am I going to find clean, potable water today? How am I going to source that? How am I going to purify my water? You just turn a tap on, and chlorinated, fluoridated water, and whatever that does to you, but it's not going to kill you immediately. That's going to come out. We have access to abundant calories and food and things like that. There's all this sort of stuff. No one's actively out hunting us any given day in Australia. So what we actually get as a result from that is that need for survival has been curtailed or changed into a seeking of comfort. And so that's what we are. We're comfort seekers, I think, a lot in Australia. And I, put my hand up. This is me too. I love sitting on the couch. I love chilling out. I love watching mindless TV, whatever it is. But I do force myself, and it is very beneficial for me, to step outside of that comfort bubble and become uncomfortable. And so I seek things like that in my workouts, in, going out into the bush, in doing bushwalking, whatever it is, that just uncomfortable situations, wherever I'm finding those points of comfort every now and then, stepping out of that. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I would say to people is learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Discomfort will not kill you. It will make you stronger. It will make you a better person. So learn to find that space and become comfortable in it.
You're right. You did steal my idea.
Got it.
Okay. Look, no, my main point here is to know yourself and know your equipment. It's vitally important that you know what your strengths and your weaknesses is, and your same goes for any piece of equipment. Know when you're getting close to these points, especially your weak points, and what you can do to mitigate them. So have a plan in place. The only way you're going to do this is by drills. And what I mean by drills is by doing the same thing over and over again. You will not go out on 1 or 2 pack marches and know actually where it's going to hurt, where you're going to falter, where your boot's going to fall off, where your pack's going to break. But if you do it over and over again as a regular event, you will be able to build up the knowledge of yourself, where it hurts, where you need to improve on, and what your strengths are. But you've got to go over and over again. So know yourself and know your equipment.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that'll do it for today.
Yep.
Any other little tidbits or anything you'd like to throw in?
That's all I've got for today. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you have listened through right to the end, Bulge, I'm looking at you. I know you're listening right now. That's our one fan, our one listener. So yeah, thank you very much for listening today. As always, hit the like, subscribe, bell, all that kind of good stuff, follows, share, all that great stuff that helps us out. And until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and
Catch you then.
catch you then.